Have you ever wondered what happens after the government says something is safe? Most people assume the next step is simple. A minister signs a piece of paper and suddenly the product appears on the shop shelves. That's not how it works. In fact, while everybody has been talking about the recent plug-in solar safety report, something far more important has quietly appeared behind the scenes. A document that almost nobody is talking about, and if you've been waiting for legal plug-in solar in the UK, this could be the biggest milestone we've seen so far. Today, I'm going to explain what it is, why it's unusual, and why I think the timing is interesting, and what it tells us about where plug-in solar is heading next. Now, a few weeks ago, the Department for Net Zero and Energy Security published an independent safety report on plug-in solar. That report was the big question everybody had been waiting to see answered. Can these systems be safely used in the UK? After months of testing, modelling, and independent assessment, the answer was yes, providing certain conditions were met. Now, if you haven't seen that video yet, I'll leave a link in the description below, because it explains this report in detail, and the report only answered one question: is plug-in solar safe? What it didn't answer was probably the more important next question: if manufacturers want to sell these products in the UK, what exactly do they have to build? And that's where this new document comes in. The Department for Net Zero and Energy Security has now published something called the Plug-in Solar Device Interim Product Specification. Now, I know that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. It doesn't feel like something that is very exciting, but this document is actually a really important step because it isn't written for people like you and me. It's written for equipment manufacturers. It tells them exactly what a compliant UK plug-in solar product needs to look like. And that tells me that we've moved into a completely different phase of this process. Government is no longer asking whether plug-in solar can work. It's now starting to define what the finished product should actually be. And that's a significant change. Now, the first thing that caught my attention wasn't actually anything technical. It was who published it. Normally, documents like this would have been published by the British Standards Institute, the BSI. They're the organisation responsible for producing British standards. Government departments usually set policy, and the BSI writes the standards that manufacturers work to. That's why I found this document interesting. Instead of waiting for the BSI, the Department, I'm just going to call them the Department for Energy, has produced what is effectively an interim product specification by itself. I honestly can't think of any examples where the government department has stepped into this space. Now, before anyone says that I'm stating this as a fact, I'm not. I'm sure there are other examples out there. I'm just making an observation based on information that is readily available that I can find. And I think this is really unusual. I think the clue is right there in the title: interim. To me, the use of the word interim suggests this isn't intended to replace a future BSI standard. It's designed to bridge the gap until one exists. Now, I don't know whether this is because the BSI process would have taken far too long. The document doesn't say. But anyone who's worked with standards before knows they can take months, sometimes even years to write, to work through committees, consultations, approvals. And if the government wants manufacturers preparing products to be issued right now, the interim specification makes a lot of practical sense. Now, the second thing that struck me was the timing. We're already into July. Now, think about everything a manufacturer has to do before a new product reaches the shop shelf. They've got to design it. You'd kind of hope that would already be underway. But they have to test it against the BSI or the Department of Energy standard. They have to certify it complies with the standard. They then have to manufacture it, package it, ship it, distribute it, train the retailers, produce the manuals, update the website, etc., etc., etc. None of that happens overnight. Even if legislation changed tomorrow, there would still be a lot of work to do. And that's why I think we're probably going to miss this summer from a plug-in solar point of view. Personally, I think that's a shame because that's another year of potential savings that people will have lost. But there is another way of looking at it. Given manufacturers several months to prepare could actually be a good thing. Instead of rushing through existing European standards into the UK, they now have time to produce products designed specifically for the UK market and this new specification. Now, again, this is just my interpretation of what I'm seeing. The document doesn't say any of this, and for that reason, we're just going to take it with a pinch of salt. But commercially, it makes a lot of sense. So what does the specification actually require? Now, I'm not going to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes reading through 40 pages of a pretty dry government interim standard. Instead, let's take a look at the headlines. Products must have a maximum inverter output of 800 watts, or 800 VA to be technically correct. They must also use a standard UK BS 1363 plug, or a UK plug as we call it. The plug must have a non-rewirable molded design. Now that's different from all of the products that are shipping today because these products are not designed for plug-in use. They generally come with bare wires on the end. Now, we all know how to wire a plug. Most of us do. We put a plug on the end of the wire and we plug it into the wall. But when these compliant products ship, they must have a molded plug on the end of the cable. The fuse in the plug must not exceed 5 amps. That makes a lot of sense. And the inverter must comply with G98 anti-islanding requirements. It must comply with the UK wiring regulations, which are BS 7671. And there are detailed requirements covering product testing, labels, user instructions, warnings, and installation information. And again, this might be why we want to give the manufacturers a little more time, is because all of the documentation will have to be updated to comply with this new interim standard. So in other words, this isn't a rough guide. This is a proper technical specification detailing exactly what a compliant UK plug-in solar product looks like and what it should look like. It doesn't matter which manufacturer you buy from, they should all look the same. Now, manufacturers have a clear target. They can start producing the products. Now, one thing that did surprise me, though, was something that's missing from this specification, and that's batteries. The specification doesn't cover plug-in battery systems. It doesn't cover integrated battery products. It really focuses on a very simple system. Solar panels connected to a microinverter plugged into a standard socket. That's it. Now, personally, I think this is a sensible approach to start with. Battery systems are a lot more complicated and probably require a much larger standard, and I'm sure that is something that is in the works. We're really going with a walk before you run. Get the solar generation side established, get the standard in place, then deal with the battery integration later. Now, when that eventually happens, we don't know. At some point in the future, we should see that standard. We'll have to wait and see. There's also another important detail buried in the document. It currently says only one plug-in solar product should be used per household. Now, before everybody rushes to the comments, there is an important footnote. It also says in the requirement this could change to one device per circuit depending on the outcome of the consultation. Now, that consultation has been ongoing. It actually closed yesterday, and the government is committed to get the results of that published within the next couple of weeks. So we may see this one microinverter per household requirement change hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But that tells us something important. The Department for Energy is still refining parts of the specification. So this isn't necessarily the final word. They're still listening to your feedback. And if you ever do have another option to give feedback, please do. Please tell them what you want rather than let the industry dictate what you will get. Now, when you stand back and look at the bigger picture, the direction of travel becomes pretty clear. First, we have the consultation, then we have the independent safety study, now we have the interim product specification telling manufacturers what compliant products should look like. So what's missing? The legislation. That's really the final major step. Until the regulations change, manufacturers can't sell these products as a standard plug-in device. But every document we've seen over the past few months have been moving us one step closer to that ultimate goal. For me, the biggest takeaway isn't actually the 800 watt limit or the 5 amp fuse or even the plug-in specification itself. The biggest takeaway is the government has moved beyond asking whether plug-in solar should happen. It's now defining how it should happen. And that feels like a very important shift. Of course, nothing is guaranteed until the legislation actually changes. Governments can always take a change of direction, and here in the UK, it's looking like we're going to have a new Prime Minister in the next couple of weeks, which possibly means a new head of the Department of Energy. So things can change, directions can move, timelines can slip. Let's cross our fingers and hope this isn't going to happen. But if you simply follow the evidence that's being presented and published, each piece seems to fit with the next one. The consultation, the safety evidence, the product specification. It's difficult not to conclude that the groundwork is steadily being put in place. As always, I'll continue to follow every development as it happens. And when the next piece of the puzzle appears, you'll hear about it here. Now, if you found this video useful, please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let me know in the comments what you think is the biggest remaining hurdle before plug-in solar finally arrives in the UK. With that, I'm going to sign off. All it remains for me to say is thank you for watching this video. It means the world to me. If I'm lucky, I'll see you back here real soon for another one. Take care. Bye-bye.